And we're live again for the XYZ live stream number 7. Welcome, everyone, once you arrive. And if you're watching this after, we've got a pretty good show today lined up. We're going to be discussing Jordan Peterson's tour of Australia and South Africa again, because it's something that needs to be talked about, and also freedom of speech in the United Kingdom, because we just had a major incident where it was directly attacked, the freedom of speech of two people. They weren't allowed even into the country for the opinions that they had expressed. David Hiscox, welcome to the live stream as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matty.
You're the regular.
It's good to be here. It's going to be a good show, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. It'll be a fun one as soon as I can actually work out. As soon as I can share the link to all the social medias. So just bear with us a little bit. This is a live internet thing, and when you have a live internet thing, sometimes we have to do stuff.
Let me just have a drink, Matty.
You do it. Hold on. Oh, what? Oh, I can't see what that is. Like, your internet connection's too slow.
Do you need to see that again, Matty?
Sorry, my eyes are just a little. I don't know.
I think maybe my internet is a little slow. It might be caught back in about 1964.
Probably. Maybe it's caught in a fantasy land where Melbourne are actually a good team.
Oh, as in like 1964.
I sort of got that. Copy link address. Okay, there we go. I'm live, and I'm going to go and share this all through the social medias. So we're a little bit late today because I was having a little bit of trouble setting up the live stream for the day. And I was also watching an interview. Tommy Robinson just did an interview with Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone about their horrendous detainment by the British government, who have decided that freedom of speech is really not something that they want to defend at all. And we're going to be talking about that today. Now, have you read anything about that, David? Like, what have you seen so far regarding that?
I read that they weren't allowed into the country, and I saw just the caption of some video about Tommy Robinson being surrounded by left-wing Antifa thugs, and they were trying to take his camera. I also saw Tommy Robinson being interviewed by Stefan Molyneux last week. He was talking about how he was in Poland and it was just blowing him away. The difference in the way that he was treated in Poland to how he's treated in England. Like in Poland, people are like, well, yes, of course, we're proud of our country and we're proud of our heritage and our people and who we are. And of course, we want to protect that, and it's okay to speak out for that. And it was just... it was really interesting because for him over in Poland, it seemed a little bit depressing coming back to England. And well, if people are getting stopped at the airport, you can understand.
I can understand why he'd be upset. It's absolutely horrendous. Like, how I don't know where they get off putting these people in detention for 3 days. Surrounded by other Muslims, surrounded by Muslims as well. Like, they're lucky that Muslims, they weren't actually tipped off, because it could have been a very, very serious situation. And honestly, it just makes me sort of really think twice about any plans that I may have had for going to Britain anytime in the future. I don't think I ever will, just for that reason, because, I mean, I've got my own YouTube channel and all. I mean, my profile is very, very small right now, but just because they're doing it to a couple of the bigger guys now, it doesn't mean they're not going to expand it to smaller people in the future, or anyone who has said anything that they don't like online. And really, all it is, it's just the government's absolute cowardice in the face of Islamic extremism. They are afraid of the reaction that will happen, that they'll get if one of these people interviewed Tommy Robinson or went to Speaker's Corner and actually said what they were going to say. But however, all that's happened is it's put a big spotlight on the British government. Theresa May is an absolute moron. This person is not fit for government. She's not fit to do anything. She should really resign in shame over what she's doing to her country, and the fact that she's not she's not courageous enough to just tell the EU to go shove off and close the border, and basically tell the Muslims in the country that, look, if you want to be British, you can be British, but if any of you start talking nonsense about, you know, the supremacy of the Quran over the British Crown, and you start attacking people simply for having views that you don't like, then we're going to kick you out or put you in prison for the rest of your life. It's just getting to the point where something's got to give. The government's pushing down its own citizens. They're suppressing their own citizens. They're suppressing the citizens of other countries, a US citizen as well. They're putting a US citizen in detention simply for the views that she has. And they're putting people in prison. Like, they put 2 political leaders in prison for sharing pamphlets about Islam. I mean, this is Britain first. Yeah.
Aggravated racial harassment or something along those lines. Just for pointing out that there was a trial going on of Muslims for, I'm not quite sure what they're on trial for. Was it terrorism or?
It might have been the grooming gangs or something like that. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. I think, basically, they were basically raising attention about a trial, and they got sent to jail for racially aggravated harassment.
It's criminal. It's genuinely criminal, and honestly, it's really dangerous as well. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, we're going to be talking about South Africa a little later, and what's happening there. I know it's a long way down the track in South Africa, and these white people over there are getting victimized and all that kind of thing. We will discuss that. But I'm very, very worried for Britain as well, because as soon as you start suppressing speech, as soon as you start knocking people, that your own citizens, British citizens, who likely are, you know, however many generations, at least, you know, 100, 200 generations of generation British people, whatever it is. I mean, British culture goes back thousands of years. When you're telling these people that they're not allowed to speak and putting them in prison for saying things about a group of people that hate Britain, they hate, like, these Muslim people. I mean, there might be a few that do actually like Britain, but not the most prominent ones, not the imams, not the people that are at the top. And I would say the majority are distinctively un-British, and they're un-European, and they don't value anything that the British people do value. They don't value freedom of speech. They don't value freedom of religion. They don't value any kind of personal liberty. To them, Islam is king. That's what they value most of all. And when you're telling your own British citizens that, you know, you're going to be put in prison for telling the truth about Islam, and we're not going to say anything, and we're going to something else we're going to be talking about. We're not going to say anything about Muslims raping children for fear of being racist. I mean, look at that. Like, this is not a recipe for a good result. This is not a good thing. This needs to stop, because if it doesn't stop, I mean, now that these British First people, like these British First leaders, have been put in prison for essentially just expressing an opinion, and rather than standing up and saying, you know what, that's bullshit, that's absolute bullshit, we're not going to stop talking, you can put us in prison for the rest of our lives if you like, we are not going to stop talking. Rather than doing that, I think one of them has gone around and said, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that. No. That's a really, really bad idea, because now the next group of people are going to look at that. There's going to be another group of people who are next in lines, looking at what they've done, looking at how cowardly they are for not standing up for the truth and their own values. And they're going to think, you know what? Words have failed, because words have failed. Words aren't allowed in Britain anymore. Words have failed. There's a statement of fact. That's true. Words have failed in Britain, because you don't have freedom of speech anymore. And it's getting eroded, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's going to get to the point where someone's just going to say, you know what, this is going to end now. And they're going to get guns shipped in from Ireland or Russia or wherever. And we're going to have a real problem on our hands. Theresa May needs to pull the pole out of her fat, old, wrinkled ass and really, really, really take a long, hard look in the mirror look at the British people, look at what she's doing to the country, look at the opposition leader who wants to do it even more, and say, wait, if she's incapable of turning around and repealing hate speech laws, standing up for British heritage, standing up for freedom of speech, liberalism, and true Western values, then she needs to piss or get off the pot, because she's going to bring a very, very, very serious situation to her own country. And it won't just be her fault, but it'll be a lot her fault. It'll be the fault of the people before her as well, who did nothing. It'll be the fault of all these people who stood by while children were getting raped and didn't say anything because they were afraid of being called racist. Yeah, and I can't believe how disgusting it is for the British government to put 2 foreign citizens in detention for words and opinions that they had. That's just unbelievable. That is a gross, gross, gross abuse of government power, and it really needs to be called out.
Well, it's not the first time as well. I think Robert Spencer, who is an expert on Islam, he's been banned, I think, from the UK. I also heard a story about a Muslim imam who was speaking out against Islam, and he was actually talking about how like violence is at the core of the Quran, and he was actually banned from the UK. This isn't the first time this has happened. Regarding like basically both sides of British politics are betraying the British people. You had UKIP who came along for Brexit, and they were speaking for the British people, but then you have the Tories and the Labour Party. At the moment, they don't have the best interests of the British, like the British people, in mind at all. And so it's why we're always talking, because we want to raise awareness about all of this sort of stuff. And we want to keep conversations going, and we want free speech to be able to happen, because the end point of all this is, as you say, like, we don't like what the end point looks like. It looks like collapse. It looks like civil war. And if there's civil war in Europe, like what I worry about is basically the electricity going out, no medicine, no painkillers, no water, just chaos, and like millions of people are going to die. Like that's where we're headed if they don't let people say what they think, and if they keep acting against their own interests.
Exactly. And I'm willing to give Theresa May the benefit of the doubt, in that I don't think she's smart enough to know how stupid she is. I think she's actually just stupid. Based on what she said, what other people have said about her who pay a lot more attention, I see her actions and I think she's just a complete idiot who has no idea what she's doing and really should resign because she's too stupid for the job. She should go and manage a daycare center. That's probably too hard for her as well. But this other guy, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he could come in and maybe fix the problem and actually stand up for British values and Western values. Someone needs to stand up and say, you know what? We are British. This is what Britain stands for. And if you don't like it, you can piss off. And if someone doesn't say that, like I said, like I really do not want violence to happen in Britain because it's not, like you said, millions of people will die. Millions of people will die unless people are allowed to speak their mind and talk about the problems that are actually going on. And the thing is, the problems are 100% because of, first of all, PC thugs silencing people, and second of all, on the same token, these elite PC thugs are bringing in hundreds of thousands of millions of third world migrants who do not share the same values as other Europeans, and just basically kowtowing to them and sticking their asses up in the air and saying, come and rape us, you stupid migrants, or you lovely migrants, because you know what, we don't care about British values anymore, and we'd rather just have rape gangs in our towns because apparently saving children from getting raped is less of a priority than someone calling you a racist. You absolute cowards. Honestly,
you look at the language. You look at the language that they use now in England and in all of Europe. They talk about, if we just England. They say England is a country of migrants, which is absolute rubbish. It's hilarious because they used to use that argument about Australia, and like our ancestors migrated over from Europe, and then we've had people migrating from other countries as well. But to try to actually use that argument in the UK, I don't even like calling it the UK anymore. I like to call it Great Britain. To use that argument in Great Britain is just downright lying. Like if you look at a graph of like how the migrants came into England, like there's not much of a graph. Like you see, like in a couple of hundred years ago, you see about 30,000 Huguenots coming over the course of a few decades. And of course, Great Britain has been invaded a few times, and that generally changed over the elite class. But if you look at an actual map, a DNA map of Great Britain, what you'll find is that the people living just in specific regions share this. There's like a 90% correlation or something ridiculously high between their DNA and the DNA that they found of skeletons from a couple of thousand years ago. Like that's just how regional England has been. That's just how homogenous England has been. And just to turn around and say this is a nation of migrants and to just completely just overrun the country is ridiculous. And so like you've got to wonder if there's a real agenda going on here. And if there's an agenda going on here, then there's a reason for them keeping these people out and keeping people from actually talking publicly about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like every time someone speaks out about what's happening, they seem to get thrown in prison. Yeah. It's funny that, and this is the problem. This is what I was talking about. If every time you speak out against this problem, you get thrown in prison, well, I'm not going to, what's the logical next step? How do you fight against it? How do you stop it if you can't say anything about it? Which is why what they're doing is so fundamentally criminal. It's such a horrendous abuse of human rights. And this is the thing, like, I never thought in my entire life that I would be talking about horrendous abuses of human rights in Britain on the British people by their own government. Yeah. What happened? Like, what happened? I mean, America got their Donald Trump. Thankfully, America got Donald Trump, and he could well save the world from nuclear war. But if the price to pay for nuclear war for Donald Trump was Britain gets destroyed, I mean, would you take that price? I don't know. Hopefully, we can actually save Britain by sneaking out from here. Yeah,
it really kills me. Like going to England last year, it really killed me. To actually walk around London and see that 45% British percentage of the population, that really killed me. And to see the attitude of the British people, and to see the advertising, and just to see the way that art is presented there, it's like at least in London, it's like they've surrendered.
That's the thing. It's like you see so many people. Well, you see so many people on YouTube talking about what's happening, and you see all these big prominent individuals who are British talking about what's happening, and then you hear stories like that and I saw a story the other day, I think it was on, I can't remember where it was, but where this guy was putting up a British flag out of his own property, and this caused some kind of hullabaloo, and it was like, got people all pissed off because he was just, all he was doing was showing a British flag. I can tell you, if someone got annoyed at me for showing an Australian flag, I'd tell them to shove it right up their ass. Yeah. It's like, what the hell? This is a joke. Like, this is Britain.
I'd wave the Australian flag around like a towel, maybe wet it a little bit, and I'd chase him and start smacking him.
I'd be like, you know what? If you want me to take it down, I'm going to get it tattooed on my forehead. All right, maybe that's not. That's probably a little silly, but
I prefer the thing that you buy stuff with. I'm wearing my tinfoil hat all the time.
Yeah, the old tinfoil hat. Well, I mean, it does look like it's an outside agenda. It does look like that, but it also looks like decades of propaganda have really got to a lot of the British people. Like you watch a lot of British TV, and it's don't be racist this, don't be racist that, and they've got all their racial quotas and all that kind of nonsense. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is just silly. I mean, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Obviously, there are other ethnicities in Britain, and I mean, I've always said
there are now.
There are now, exactly. There are now because they've been let in. But I would say at least a lot of the old ethnicities, like especially the Indians who were westernized ultimately, and I mean, Britain went over there and colonized. Well, so it turned it into a vassal state basically. So a lot of these Indian people are still essentially British, but then when you're taking in people from countries that were never under British rule, that have never had true Western values instilled in them ever, then you can't be surprised if the country starts to fall apart, and the country is falling apart. Like this is not alarmist to say so. I mean, it's in the early stages, but I wouldn't be surprised if within 5 to 10 years we see some serious conflict in Britain. I would say they desperately need a Donald Trump of some sort to go in and say the borders are closed. We're going to cut all welfare for any non-citizen. We're going to get rid of all hate speech laws, enshrine freedom of speech. Find some way of enshrining it in, like, I mean, they have Magna Carta as their constitution, or and then all the documents that came after that. But get some sort of constitutional document like that says you have the right to speak freely under any circumstances, and give them the right to bear arms as well. But I think that's pushing it for now. We can I'd settle for freedom of speech in Britain for the time being, and then push for the right to bear arms going into the future. But we really
hoping that Donald Trump would be Nigel Farage, but he just seems to have just he's got the vote and now he's just let it go. But yeah, they need somebody. What's this Mog guy like?
Oh, I've seen him. He looks pretty good. He's got he went viral when he was doing a speech, and he basically walked up to these Antifa fools and just stared them down. And he is a hard Brexiteer, and pretty much that's all I know. I haven't actually seen much of his speeches. I just know Sargon of Akkad has spoken about him, and what I have seen of him has been quite good. Sorry, but yeah, it's he looks like he's got a lot of potential. I'll wait to pass judgment. Like, I mean, I'm only offering him up as a potential Donald Trump. It looks like he's the only viable option at the moment, but I'll wait to pass judgment. I really should actually go and look into him a little bit more to be fair with you, but he does look really good.
We'll know them by their fruits. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Right. And all I know for sure now is that Theresa May is a complete idiot.
Yeah.
She needs to go.
Yeah.
She needs to just be turfed out on her ass. She's a coward. She hasn't done anything for Britain at all. She's
no Margaret Thatcher.
She was a Remainer. Like, why would they put a Remainer as Prime Minister to do Brexit? I mean, are you idiot? Like, I saw this when she was made Prime Minister after the last guy was that David Cameron resigned. I'm like, and she was campaigning to remain. Why is she going to be the negotiator? It looks a lot like the Tory party sort of going, oh, well, you know what? We're just going to drag our heels. We don't like the vote, so we're going to make it as tough as possible. But again, this just goes into this freedom of speech. This is the British government abusing their people. They are essentially declaring war on their own people. Maybe it's not quite to that point, but it's getting to the point where the people of Britain are being outright abused en masse by their government. Right now, it's a few specific cases, but I can't see it getting any better unless the laws change and people are given the freedom to speak their mind.
Well, it is abusive to raise people from birth being told that their ancestors were horrible, and because their ancestors were horrible, they have to allow people from another country to come in and replace them. That's abuse.
Yeah, that's what they've been told. They've been brainwashed into thinking that they should be guilty of their own success. And it is abuse, and it's Marxism. It's just Marxist infiltration, likely through academia and the media, and now the highest level of the political elite in Jeremy Corbyn, the guy who said that Venezuela was a successful socialist state. And then Suddenly, no one in the left wants to talk about Venezuela, unless they're saying not real socialism. Who didn't see that one coming? I saw that one coming 10 years ago. I knew that was going to happen. In fact, I'd love to go through my old posts on Andrew Bolt's blog. I'm pretty sure I said when Venezuela fails, the left are going to say not real socialism, and they have. It's like, make me the political journalist for the Herald Sun, because that was as obvious as anything. I can't believe that.
Are you like a magician or something, Matty? I don't know how you could have predicted that. Yeah.
Do you know what? I have a crystal ball. It's a crystal ball, and on the crystal ball,
it's called a history book.
I was going to say my crystal ball only says one thing. It's like whenever socialism fails, they're going to say not real socialism.
Exactly.
It's like it's like you know, it's like the seasons. You can just predict it without failure. It's ridiculous how silly and obvious it is. Anything else you wanted to add on that? I mean, I've gone on pretty well. I'm very upset about it. I actually only really heard about this today. Free speech abuse.
Yeah, whenever free speech comes up, you get the most passionate. It's good to see.
Freedom of speech is my thing, man. You got to be able to speak your mind, because I don't want violence. I'm so against violence. I really don't like the initiation of force. And the thing is, when you silence people's right to speak, you are initiating force in the most overt way possible. And it's a disgusting abuse and really needs to end. Otherwise, we're going to get probably something on the lines of what's going to happen in South Africa within the next few years, and that place is going to have to end in civil war. I can't see any other ending for that one. Which is, you sort of wanted to talk about Jordan Peterson and his tour of Australia, just based on your article the other day.
Yeah, well, I've said a lot in the article, and it covered a lot of things. I think maybe we can talk about Jordan Peterson, what he had to say about God after we've talked about South Africa.
Yeah,
but I think that the big one at the moment is, you know, Jordan Peterson, he was asked the big question, like, what do you think about South Africa? And the way that the question was framed to him was, look, the situation in South Africa is so bad. And you, Jordan Peterson, you really focus on the individual and on individuals making the world a better place. And you have talked very strongly against the use of identity politics. But as you did a really good job, Matthew. You did a good job sort of unpacking the argument. Like, this is a situation where the only way to actually survive is to adopt a group identity and to work with people of your identity and to advocate for group identity rights. Otherwise, they're going to die. And I've really got to make this point. I covered it in the article, and I really want to make it again here. Just Jordan Peterson, like, you could see that he was really cut up about it. And Jordan Peterson, he did say, look, there comes a point when there's a gun to your head, you're out of options. So that's his way of basically saying, look, there will come a point where, like, yes, you're right, they have to go with group identity. But he was making the argument that's not yet. And so I made the argument, look, it's now. If it's now or never. What I would also say, and I've sort of had this sort of thought just today, and sorry, this will just take a few more minutes just to sort of set up, and then I'll throw to you. Something that really struck me in the introduction to Jordan Peterson's book, Maps of Meaning, I got into the first chapter. That was really dense, so I'll take a while to get through that. But he was talking about, he reached a situation in his life where his conscience would tell him, every time he was saying something that he didn't really believe, it would tell him, you don't believe that, that's not true. And he wouldn't actually be able to speak any longer because his conscience just wouldn't let him. And so, like, what I saw, like, on stage, what I think I saw was Jordan Peterson sort of really, really thinking hard and possibly being quite agonized about it. But what's also possible, and, you know, I'm putting thoughts into his head, and I'm trying to analyze a professional psychologist here. But, like, maybe his mind is changing, but maybe he doesn't want to say something until he's absolutely certain, because he knows once he does change his tune on that, then, like, it's going to change a lot of the things about him and his tour and what he says, and it changes everything. So if he is going to change his mind, like, he has to be really certain. Until then, he's not going to really come out strongly.
Yes, like that. Yeah. So you touched on a few things there.
Yeah.
With Look, you're right. I think you've summed up Jordan Peterson's attitude on the situation fairly well, as far as I can tell, and it does fit the way he operates. I think I sort of detailed it in the video I did, the BitChute exclusive. Everyone, go check him out. Where with identity politics, I'll just reiterate for anyone who hasn't seen the video. My point is, so Jordan Peterson talks about the individual and how the individual is the way to salvation, essentially. So every individual does everything they can to make their life better, the life of their family better, and the life of their community better. And if everyone does that, and we make it as universal as possible, this is how you improve the lives of everyone. You need to give everyone the freedom to speak their mind. Oh, you also have to tell the truth as well. That's another thing he's really big on. I don't think I mentioned that in the video, but it is really important. And the problem with situations like South Africa is that you have individuals being threatened based on a group identity. Now, this flips the chessboard completely up, and it doesn't actually change. See, it doesn't make you a collectivist to recognize that fact and to point out that this is a fact. Like, this is the South African government saying, we are going to take the land off you if you have white skin, because we're racists, apparently. Like, they are black racists. So they're doing that, and then we've got these people maybe potentially sort of Marxist third parties telling thugs to go and brutalize certain farmers so that they'll get off their land. And it's really, really, really disgusting the way that they're treating white people and talking about white people over there. When it gets to that point, you've got to sort of turn around and say, well, if I'm going to be victimized for my white skin, and they're going to be victimized for their white skin, and they're going to be victimized for their white skin, then for me as an individual, the best thing for me to do is to band together with these people and fight for my own survival, because we're the ones getting victimized. So we've got to do this. I mean, if I start just doing what's best for me and my community, is all these people that are getting victimized as well, and us banding together. So the difference being with that situation is they do have a gun to their head. They've got a gun to their head. They're getting threatened with force. And this is why the initiation of force is so immoral, because it puts these people under these situations where they have no choice, where they have to basically band together along racial grounds, when maybe they otherwise wouldn't have, when it would be obviously a lot better if every individual in a society was just doing what was best for themselves as an individual. And that means not initiating force on other people, telling the truth, working to better yourselves, finding meaning in your life, all the things that Jordan Peterson talks about.
Sit up.
So, yeah. So? Sit up. Oh, yeah, sit up.
Like the lobster.
Like the lobster. Look, did you see my meme on the video? I put a meme on...
no.
It's like the original mobster lobster. It was like a picture of Jordan Peterson. It's a bit of a Victorian politics joke for the people out there.
Yeah. So, like, with this identity politics, there's a really obvious example that we can bring up from recent history and go, well, what about this? Like, can we see parallels? Basically, like this, is it identity politics to point out that the Jews were holocausted because they were Jewish? That's not identity politics. It happened. And
it's not.
Yeah. And so, like, okay, so like we're looking at this like in 2018, just say it was maybe 1937. Would it have been identity politics to say that something was happening which was making it look like the Jews were just going to get holocausted in 1937? It wouldn't have been identity politics.
No.
No. And like there's a theory to it. Like there are the 8 stages of genocide. There's the classification where you say, okay, these are the people, we don't like them because of these reasons. Symbolization, where you actually sort of mark them out, like whether it's the star or whether it's saying, hey, they have white skin. Dehumanization, well, that's going on with South Africa. You can see in the attitudes of a lot of people towards South Africans, like when you bring up the fact that it's going on, the most common one that you get from lefties is that they deserve it. Like,
I can't stand that.
If that's not dehumanize them, I don't know what is. Yeah.
Every time someone said that to me the other day, and I basically told him to get effed. I don't.
Yeah.
I swear. I tend to swear a lot in my everyday life, but I try not to. And I just told him he was a complete piece of shit because it's just horrendous. I would, and if anyone ever says that, if anyone says, "Oh, well, they're white people, they deserved it," I'll say, first of all, you're a piece of shit for saying that. Just want to get that off the way. Second of all, the land wasn't being farmed when white people got there.
There was nobody involved.
Get that?
There was almost nobody there. Almost nobody there.
No one there. And the land was basically abandoned. It was not getting farmed. The minerals weren't being mined. If there were no white people, there would be no farms.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Like, this is an undeniable fact. No white people means no farms. So for them to go and say, well, we want to steal our farms back, what do you mean back? They're not yours. Like, they were never yours. And these are 8th generation, 7, 8 generations of families. And even if the land was stolen, which is debatable as to whether it was or not, even if it was, the people alive today did not do anything. Like, they didn't do it. Like, they're not the criminals. They're not the ones who colonized. They were just born into it. How can you victimize these people? Exactly. How can you steal the property of their family when, like, not only their family, it was like 8 generations ago when the farm started. So what's that, like great grandparents? Like, these are people that they never interacted with ever. The only interaction they've had is genetic over also, 8 generations.
Get this. The main South African, like black South African tribes, the Zulu and the Xhosa, the Zulu, they came through. Like, one of the reasons why South Africa was mostly uninhabited was that the Zulus had come through. And they just wiped out huge areas of population. They'd wiped out huge populations from vast areas of land.
Yeah.
So a lot of these black South African tribes are actually the descendants of the people who committed the genocide. I just thought I'd throw that one out there.
I was watching I was watching a Stefan Molyneux talk today where he was actually talking with the leader of the Sidelanders. I'd never heard about them until I started reading.
Simon Roche?
Simon Roche, yeah.
Yes.
So they're the largest non-government civil defense force in the world. And, the guy's got his head switched on straight. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I can't see anything but defeat for the ANC if they were to actually end up doing something, because these are the farmers who actually know the land and, they're determined local populace, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So one of the things he mentioned was that during the so-called abusive part of apartheid, during this place where there was so-called all these human rights abuses and, the Boers were doing the worst things and this, the population of black Africans in South Africa went up by 8 times. This is the population increased by 8 times. This is somehow while these abusive white South Africans were in charge. I mean, somehow abusing black people and killing black people or doing whatever. But meanwhile, they're making food with the farms. They're bringing technology. They're bringing ideas. They're bringing jobs, businesses, basically making the country prosperous. And it's now arguably the only prosperous country in all of Africa, and that's going to be, and that's going to stop very, very soon. So they've built this country, and now for some reason these idiot Africans want to take away all the farms and turn South Africa into a hellhole, and that's what they really want to do. And one of the things they mentioned is it's unlikely that the African leadership in South Africa don't know what they're doing. Like, they probably know what they're doing. They probably are planning on killing a whole lot of people, and not just white people. That's the thing. We have to stress this. It's not just white people that are going to die through the even if there was no war, even if they just took the land and did what happened in Zimbabwe, millions and millions of black people are going to die, not just in South Africa, but all across the continent, because how much food do those South African farms produce? Like, they'd be producing the majority of the food in South Africa easily. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a destabilized South African nation. And you're going to have, the wars are going to spread. You're going to have less food here. You're going to have less goods here. Then less people are going to have food over in another country. And you're just going to have a humanitarian disaster on your hand. And it's all
going to end up in Libya.
It's all because of Marxism, and yeah, they'll probably all try to get into Europe again, and there'll probably be even more refugees coming into Europe because the Marxists decided that they wanted to destroy another country for some reason.
Yeah. So taking it back just to that, like if we can, what I think would be really interesting is to make the case that like we have to play identity politics in this situation. Like if you look at the other like stages of a genocide, you've got organization, polarization, and preparation, and you can see that's really where we are now. The government is instituting laws to make it legal to take the land. So like it's like all the chess pieces are set in place, and they're ready to go through with extermination, which is number 7. What I find interesting is number 8. Page 8, the bit that comes after the extermination, it's like it's almost going on already. Like just the way that the mainstream media is trying to portray this as just people on the alt-right going nuts and just being racist and making this a racial thing.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the people, like the media are really complicit, either complicit or outright advocating for the for a genocide of a race, because when they say, "Oh, it's just far right people," it's the far right, and it's just racist talking about it. I mean, I am not. I hate to say that term. I am not a racist, because it's like the fact that I shouldn't have to say that. It's just ridiculous.
I actually consider the term racist to be a Marxist invention. So I think,
yeah. It. Well, that's the thing. It's like. So I'll try not to acknowledge it. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to acknowledge it. I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it.
Racially aware.
I don't judge people based on their race. That's what I'm trying. I don't judge an individual based on the color of their skin or their heritage. That's not how I judge an individual. And in fact, I won't judge a group based on their heritage. I'll judge individuals by what they say and what they do. And it's as simple as that. And when you've got groups of individuals like you have in Africa, banding together based on the color of their own skin in order to abuse people and the words on the tip of my tongue, whatever it is, to persecute people of another skin color. This is bad. Like this is not something that should be ignored, and you certainly shouldn't be abusing and calling someone a racist simply for talking about it, simply for standing up for the victims of horrendous crimes. And the thing is, that's the problem with the left-wing media. Like they genuinely think they're doing the right thing. They think they're standing up against this evil boogeyman of Nazi and far-right racist. I mean, ultimately, they're either useful idiots or they're horrendously immoral people who genuinely wish ill will on their fellow human being, and that's just not good. Like I don't think that they should have anywhere near the sway that they do, but for some reason the Marxists have taken over so much of the media, and people, especially people in America, have sort of woken up. And I think in America a lot of people are getting a lot more of their news online and their commentary online. I don't think it's so much in Australia as yet, but that's what we're doing. We're trying to grow the alternative media in Australia, which there isn't really much of an alternative media in Australia. But we can grow it, and we can get, start speaking about issues that actually matter and speaking about them without being afraid. And here's the thing, like it's almost got to the point where I kind of hope someone in the media calls me a racist so that I can turn around and just laugh at them, because ultimately it would just get us more exposure and it would just get more people to the site and all that kind of thing. And it would just be there. And then I'm happy to sit down in a forum and debate someone on these issues. I'm not going to lie down and slink away if they're going to turn around.
They can come on our show. They can come on our show. We're not going on their show. They can come on ours.
That's a good point, actually. If they want to debate these issues, they can come on our show. We can talk it. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, would I ever go on Q&A? And I don't think I ever would. No way. I wouldn't even go in the audience. And I might, if Andrew Bolt invited me on his show to do an interview, I'd do that. But because I mean, Andrew Bolt's the man. The uncle. What did he say? He's the daggy uncle of journalism.
Yeah, I think that's what Lucas Rosses has been referring to. The daggy old dad of Australian conservatism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm banging on and on and on about this sort of like we have to play identity politics, or to dismiss this as identity politics is just very simplistic. Like I'm banging on about this. Here's another argument I want to make. This will take a couple of minutes. I want to throw it at you because I think you'll find this one very interesting, because this is one that I've really had to grapple with. And yeah, we'll see how you take this one. So my argument is basically that libertarians are actually collectivists. Libertarians, there's a form of identity politics involved in it. Let me go with this one. Yeah, okay. So
this is interesting.
Yeah, so libertarians are a group of individuals who are high functioning, hardworking, high IQ, and they don't want to have their stuff taken by people who are lower IQ, don't work as hard, aren't as high functioning. And so they promote ideas and policies which promote their own self-interest. But their own self-interest as an individual, but also as a group, like other people who think like them. And they work together and band together like a group. So you could say that is like a collective of individuals in a way. And so from there, you could actually make the case that a nation is just that on a larger scale. Like you could say that a Western nation, which generally has a higher IQ than other countries in the world, generally more productive, harder working, generally better functioning, they want to protect what's theirs. Like a nationalist in a Western country wants to protect what's theirs, protect their borders. They don't want their wealth stolen. They don't want their people to be suppressed and all this sort of stuff. So in many ways, like the dynamics between a nationalist and a libertarian are very, very similar.
Yeah, see, this is a topic that I've grappled with over the years. It's like, how do you resolve the difference between individuality and things like the nation state and things like nationalism and all that kind of thing? But it's effectively like you said. See, for me, I mean, obviously, I'm an individualist. I believe in freedom of speech. I think people should work hard and change life for the better. And, you know, if I ever got to a point where I was successful enough to genuinely help other people in a tangible way, I would be doing that as well. But again, yeah, how do you say, oh, you're an individualist, but what about the state? Here's the thing. Every group is made up of individuals. Just because you are an individualist at a core doesn't mean you can't believe in things like a nation, but what you also have to do is remember that ultimately the individual is still more important than the nation. Like the rights of the individual still supersede the rights of the nation anyway, because if the rights of every individual within that nation is respected, then the rights of the nation take care of itself. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's my right as an individual to be free from abuse and from violence, to be free from abuse, to be free from a foreign entity coming and trying to take my stuff. I mean, even though the government tries to take our stuff every day, at least they're not trying to kill me. You know, at least they're not trying to come in and they're not actually physically taking all my things. They're trying to take my money. You know, they take my money every time I buy something. They take my money if you were not working enough to pay tax, they take your money there. But at least they're not coming and physically harming you because they just want to take your stuff and leave you with nothing. They still like. It was a great little video, a long video by, again, Stefan Molyneux, who talked about the evolution of slavery and how now we're all just tax slaves. And I think, you know, we need to work to ending that tax slavery and all that kind of thing. But to get back to what you're talking about in terms of the nation, it's like, if we are a nation of individuals, then a nation of individuals can band together to defend ourselves as a nation. So long as we are doing it under a common beliefs and common values. And this is what happened, you know, in World War II and even shortly after World War II. But it's sort of slowly eroded as the Marxists have taken over the institutions and pushed, you know, things like social justice and all that kind of thing. My problem with identity politics is is the Marxism. The Marxism is the problem. This is what we have to stipulate. It's the use of state force to appropriate people's property in order to give it to someone else in order to gain power. It's the use of state force to abuse the population in order to enhance the power of the state. This is what Marxism ultimately is. They can use, words like, oh, we're equality and we're social justice warriors and we're feminists. We want to, they have that voice too because they're feminists. We want to make it equal between men and women. And then when it is equal, oppression, my patriarchy and all that kind of crap. So the problem ultimately comes down to Marxism and their desire to use state power to enhance their own wealth and the power of the state in general. The state is not the nation. This needs to be emphasized. The state is not the nation. The state is collectivism. The state
on that, it's really interesting because throughout the 19th century and the 20th century, the state utilized and mobilized nationalism in order to reach its own ends. But nationalism is something which exists in its own right. Like the idea for men, like that something exists that's bigger than them and gives them a connection to their brothers and to their past. Like we just go nuts over that. And that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's how it's used that is like, it's the ring of power, really. Nationalism is the ring of power, and it's the thing which is mobilizing men across the West.
That's actually not 100% true.
Yeah.
The ring of power is sophistry. And that's where it is. The ring of power is sophistry.
Yeah, right.
And you're right in the sense that they use nationalistic words.
Yeah.
At the heart, it's sophistry. It's like the corruption, the use of words to corrupt people's minds and to bring people around you, rather to use words in a way that is not truthful and honest. And this is what the hobbits are. The hobbits are, they're pure truth-telling, pure individuals who, they're able to take the power, the ring of sophistry, and cast it into the fire of Mount Doom. But I think part of the story of the Lord of the Rings is it's like, you can't be weak. You can't be weak. Adversity strengthens you, and if you have a genuine existential threat, then you do have to stand up and defend yourself. Which is why the Lord of the Rings is going to be a story that lasts for a long, long time. And Game of Thrones isn't. Game of Thrones is entertaining, but that's about it. It's entertaining and it's fun.
Game of Thrones it's an inversion of the Lord of the Rings. It's interesting then that like the idea of nationalism has been just demonized in that way. Like it's been used. You could say that it's been used by the state in the same way that Marxism has. But really, there's nothing wrong with mobilizing and inspiring people along with the idea of nationalism.
Yeah, and I was just once someone in the chat just said that Marxism is identity politics. I agree.
Core.
Yeah, I agree that Marxism is identity politics. It's either classism or classism, and now they're using race in South Africa, or in feminism, it's gender identity politics, and then in social justice, it's transgenderism and whatever bullcrap that they want to throw. The LGBTQARS2F plus exclamation mark community and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, Marxism 1.0 was identity politics at its purest. It pitted one group of society, the poor, against another group of society, the rich. It deliberately split the people of a nation down the middle and pitted them against each other. It was more successful in some places than others. But at its core, it's identity politics. And so you can say that identity politics is just an outgrowth of that, a natural outgrowth.
Yeah, well, it is. And that's the thing. And this is why when I hear people talking about postmodernism and how it is Marxism and you compare the two, it's like, well, that should be obvious to anyone who's actually paying attention. The thing is, so many people are just they're not open to it. Like, they're not aware of it. And this is why, in Britain, the British people are pretty much asleep to what's going on. I would imagine a lot of them are asleep, and it's going to take some serious cries for maybe enough of them to wake up to what's actually going on. And I mean, this did you see the Telford grooming gang issue? Have you actually seen what happened there? It was like the worst one yet.
No,
it was the worst one yet.
It's a recent one.
Yep. So there was another one in Telford, been going on since the 80s, so nearly 40 years, and the authorities knew about it, but they didn't do anything about it because they didn't want to be seeming racist. It's the same thing as Rotterdam. It's just what kind, like, I think I heard someone say again, there's this idea of, you can be, there's such thing as a passive evil. So you can do, and there's an active good, like there's a forceful good and there's a passive evil. You can use force to defend your family or to defend your land and to defend the people around you. That's okay. If you're under threat, you are morally obliged to defend yourself with reasonable force. Like, it has to be reasonable. It can't be excessive. And it's always self-defense. You're always allowed to defend yourself. But there's also a passive evil. If you sit by while something evil is going on and you do nothing about it, you're evil. You're a bad person. You are evil. And the thing is, if the only reason you don't do something about it is because you're afraid someone might call you names, you're doubly evil. You're a piece of shit. Like, really, genuinely, these people who sat down, I'm swearing a lot on this one because I'm so pissed off because I knew shit like this was going to happen. I could see it happen. I knew that Britain were like abusing their people and abusing their citizens, and then this comes out at the same time that the two journalists, Sellner and Pettibone, get detained in basically the same week where this horrible abuse comes out about 2 weeks after, or 2 or 3 weeks after the two Britain First leaders get put in jail simply for saying things that people don't like. I knew this was going to happen. And now if you're an Antifa activist, it doesn't matter. Like, you can be an Antifa activist, organize, prepare violence, basically incite violence against people who disagree with you. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. No one's arrested. No one's hunted down. You're more likely to get put in prison if you throw breakfast food at a mosque than you are if you are inciting violence as an Antifa activist.
I think you just made quote of the day there, Matty.
Oh, yes, I've never been quote of the day before.
Yeah. That's
it's the truth.
You're more likely to get arrested for throwing breakfast food at a mosque than you are for inciting violence. Yeah, absolutely.
But mate, it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah, it's true.
It's disgusting. It's horrendous what's going on over there. I can't believe it's got this bad. And I'm really, because again, like, words up, use your words. Use your words all the time. Use your words. And if you shut people up and they can't use your words, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they're going to do? Like, are you on drugs? Like, have you ever read a history book? Do you know how the world works? Thankfully, there's still people like Tommy Robinson and Paul Joseph Watson and Sargon of Akkad and all these British people who are still talking about it. So it's not got to it's not past that point yet. It's not past the point of no return. So it's not necessary. It's not necessary yet. And hopefully it's never necessary. I really, really hope it's never necessary. But, things could go south really, really quickly if the people of Britain aren't careful and they don't start speaking out and actually putting their head up and stop being afraid of being called racist. If someone calls you a racist for having an opinion that they don't like, that is a compliment. That's a compliment. Unless you're actually...
It means that they've lost the argument.
It means they've lost the argument. It means they lose. And if someone calls you a racist for having an opinion that they don't like, you are more than obliged and more than allowed to turn around and start insulting them and just calling them an idiot and just abusing them back. That's all you have to do.
That's it.
If you want to. Like, you don't even have to. You can be polite and you can laugh at them, or you can just shake your head. I mean, it depends on your style. My style is to just turn around and start swearing at them and calling them morons and laughing at them because they're complete idiots.
I think you were perfectly justified in saying that person who was saying that the South Africans deserve it. That's just insane. If I can, I've got one more sort of prepared question, which I want to throw at you, because it works along this libertarian nationalist kind of line, and it links in with the amazing video that you made this week or last week about why democracy fails. That one really speaks to me a lot about my own pessimism about.
Did you like the little cartoon? I don't know. I got right into making.
I think the animations are amazing. Personally, I think you should make it would be interesting to make a whole series of them.
Wait for my next one. Wait for my next one. I finished it. I exported it today. I finished it earlier in the week.
Is this the one on a certain opposition leader?
Oh, I've done that one as well. That's a different one. Okay. That's a meme video. This is my voice. Before I'll tell you about. I'll do my voice, but before that, I'll tell you the next one. It's on why saying Google is a private company is not an argument to allow them to censor people and remove channels. Yeah, right. There's like a 5-minute cartoon at the start. Like I've created the whole penguin planet and everything. It's like Bird Planet. And there's 2 endings as well. There's 2 endings. I've made a secret ending that I'm going to put on BitChute. So there's going to be a nice ending on YouTube and a secret ending on BitChute.
Oh, wow. I think you've basically made XYZ South Park. I think that's
I don't know how it happened. I'm just like, this is great fun. Like, just go but it's like, this is my Bill Shorten voice. Ask me a question. Ask me a question like you're in the press gallery.
Okay. Bill Shorten, do you think it's okay to promise people free stuff that the country can't afford?
Thank you, David Hiscox, for your annoying question. Clearly, you're racist. Please shut up.
That actually sounds just like him. Just those practiced pauses. Yes.
I'm going to cover my nose for it. Yeah. It's da 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 da. Yes. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Every single
da 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 da. Every single time. Because when you I think it was you who mentioned that. I've actually when I was making the video, I listened to him speaking, and I'm like, holy crap! He speaks exactly the same tone every single sentence. It's exactly the same.
Yep, that's it. That's it. We'll make that one go viral. So this question. Your video about why democracy fails, like you analyze the way in which there's always going to be a smaller percentage and then basically a smaller voting block of people who are producing the wealth of the country. And so they're always going to get outvoted by the people who can vote to take their stuff.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. And so like you transport that idea over to South Africa. Could you not get a more perfect example of the exact dynamics that you're talking about? You have a small proportion of the population producing the majority of the wealth, and the majority of the people who have the majority of the votes are basically putting it in law to make it legal to take their stuff.
Yeah,
it just so happens that in this case, it's an identity group, and it's white people. But if ever there was a case to say, look, this is exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about, and we have to stand up for the rights of these people, this is it.
And I'm not sure exactly why you had to ask the question, because it seems pretty obvious that that's obvious. The case. It's like, yes, that's exactly what's happened over there. You have a small block of the most productive people being outvoted by a much larger block of people who aren't productive, and they want to take not only do they want to take the income, and they actually want to take the land and ultimately the lives of the people who are more productive because of some sort of revenge porn that they've been wound up into thinking that the white people are the problem, like the cause of all problems in Africa, which is a complete load of crap. It's not like white people are most certainly not the cause of all the problems in Africa. In fact, I would say white people have probably done a lot to reduce a lot of the problems in South Africa, other than maybe giving them a bit of a population boost, which probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for white people. So in that regards, that's probably where white people have created the problems there. They've done so much good for South Africa that there's too many people there now, and if there's not enough food, then we're going to have a humanitarian disaster. So damn you, white people, for feeding so many people in South Africa. How could you do such a thing? That was sarcasm, by the way. If I do not want people to be starving to death. And it's really bad. I don't like. It's just it really gets me, because here's the thing. Like I don't know if you noticed, but I'm hyper empathetic. Like I can't even watch videos of people getting hurt on their skateboards. I'm that, like, if someone throws up near me, I throw up. Like this is, for some reason, I'm like totally in tune with other people when I see them feeling pain or feeling sickness. So when I see something happening overseas, I'm just like, ugh! I feel like that's happening to me in a lot of ways. Yeah, for a reason which I'll get into another time, maybe in a later video. But it's happened. I've had it my entire life. It's like when I see misery and suffering happening in another country like that, especially when it's a country like South Africa, which is, because of cricket, like upbringing with cricket, I feel even closer to it. Like you've always got the South African team coming to Australia. I know this. Like was it Pollock and Jonty Rhodes and all the, I remember Jonty Rhodes. Was it Jonty Rhodes?
There's always bad blood between the Australian cricket team and the South African cricket team.
Yeah, that's it. And there's like that rivalry.
The stuff going on at the moment is just mild. This is just run of the mill.
Oh, that's so annoying, that David Warner crap. Like David Warner whining about things being said to his wife while he's in a country where white children are getting taken out of their beds at night and murdered. It's like, well, wow, someone said something bad about your wife. You suck it up. Goodness me.
Yeah.
Dry your eyes, princess, mate. Do you know what's been said about my family? Far out. You know what's been said about me in my life? Like, come on, mate. You're an Australian cricketer. You're a millionaire. Like, who cares? Just laugh. You're an idiot.
There's going to be a poll. There's going to be a poll tomorrow. We have
to have a poll. Is it okay to say something? I actually think it's okay to say anything on the cricket pitch. I think we should actually let anything be said. This is part of the game, mate. This is like, you should be able to call someone anything you want and say anything about anything you like, as long as you're not like, actually wishing proper ill will on someone. Then who cares? It's just words, mate. Words are wind.
My tinfoil hat theory is actually that a big deal was made about sledging because the Aussies were so good at it, and it was part of the way that the Aussies got above another team over the course of 5 days. They wore their opposition down just like mentally and physically and almost spiritually. Like you see the way that like really good sides would be able to keep up with Australia for 3.5 days, and then they would just go. And so I think back to like the Andrew Simons incident at the SCG against India as well. And like since then, like there's just been this attack on Australia, and just to go, hey, be nicer. And we started being nicer, and we started losing. So again, like I'm driving to this point. It's like all of these questions that I've got are driving to this point, and it gets to the heart of where I think it might eat Jordan Peterson up inside, and it might be one of those reasons why it's such a big deal. It's one of those dividing lines between what often gets referred to as the alt-right and the alt-right. Or it's just the dividing line between people who are prepared to say, look, we have to take the side of white people. The idea, like in South Africa, like it's a great example of the dynamics that you're identifying with why democracies fail. Like you have a small group of people, the larger group of people want to take their stuff. We've got this universalist idea in the West that our ideas can be exported to other countries. And we've seen that can work to an extent in countries which have a general high IQ, places like Japan, South Korea, China. And that's been applied quite well over there. And they've got their own cultures and their own way of just keeping their whole country together, which seem to work quite well as well. We've got this idea that like we can just take it anywhere, and anybody can take this idea and become a Westerner, and then they can come here and become a Westerner as well. But what we're seeing is that whenever we take away our control, like post-colonialism has been a disaster for a lot of the third world. Like when the West has pulled out, these countries have collapsed. And what we fail to see is that the people are different. As Westerners, like we're very empathetic. I'm very empathetic like you, and we want to see that people are like us and they want the same things as us. But maybe this idea maybe ideas such as the free market and free speech, even Christianity to a certain extent. Maybe those ideas are things that work really, really well for the West, but not for everybody else. And maybe we should start to just apply those to our own societies and have some stronger boundaries for ourselves.
Yeah. Sorry, I was actually a little bit distracted by the chat for the second. So I'm sure you made a few great points. I'm not exactly sure how.
They were stunners.
They were amazing. Sorry, I do try to listen, but people have been asking a couple of questions in chat, and I had to respond to them.
Let me simplify it.
Yep.
And only white people have Christianity and democracy in the free market.
Yep. Well, okay. So I did hear what you said. It's like, oh, we basically have to take the side of white people. I don't see it in that way. I see it as we need to be taking the side of people who are getting of successful people who are highly productive, who add a lot of value to the world, who are being persecuted for the color of their skin and the fact that they're productive. Because it's ultimately Marxism. I mean, it's like the people that they hire a lot of black employees and black farm workers, and these black farm workers are also getting victimized as well. So for me, I mean, I point out that the fact that they're white people and we really need to be sticking up for them. And I mean, it's important to highlight that this is a group getting persecuted, but rather than say, oh, we need to take the side of white people because we're white. I mean, I don't see it like that. I see it as this is a group of people that have done nothing wrong. Firstly, they've done nothing wrong. In fact, they're guilty of trying to do the right thing to a pathological level. So they've done nothing wrong, and they're getting persecuted and they're getting brutalized, essentially. I mean, this is not something that we want to be going on. This is a Western country where people who are productive are getting brutalized in. So I'm going to take, if this was like, if it was a group of people in India, like if it was Sikhs getting victimized and all that kind of thing as well, and that I'd be just as angry about it, because for me, it's if you've got a group or a lot of individuals who, like you said, like high IQs, productive, believe in freedom of speech, believe in the rule of law, want to have a real democratic system that actually works, then we should be getting behind these individuals and these people who are being brutalized by their government and being told that they're somehow not worthy of being alive simply because maybe something happened 300-400 years ago, but we're not exactly 100% sure on whether or not it did happen, and that's somehow a justification for killing kids. I don't see.
But what if the thing that's stopping us from really jumping in is the incorrect belief that people who aren't like us, people that non-Westerners, can view the world the same way that we do, can have the same motivations that we do.
Yeah, so in that regards, I mean, yeah, look, if there is a group of people or a large group of individuals who have our same ideas and believe in the same things that I do, then yes, we should certainly be sticking up for that group, and we should certainly be pointing out issues, abuses that are happening to that group. But for me, it's like, if there was a group of, it doesn't matter. Their ethnicity is almost irrelevant. The fact is, these are people who share my values that are getting brutalized and picked on and bullied and persecuted, like I said. So for me, it's more about the values. And yeah, look, I mean, you're going to argue that race and values and all that kind of thing. And look, you do have a point, like, because a lot of our values are genetic. A lot of our values are genetic. So it's like, I mean, because our values are genetic, there's going to be some sort of racial element in there. But for me, ultimately, the decider is, what do you believe, and is what you believe compatible with what I believe? And if what you believe isn't compatible with what I believe, then there's going to be some sort of conflict there, and hopefully we can negotiate and work a way around it. But when you have a situation in South Africa where, say, I'm a farmer, and then you've got the government on that side, so what you believe, what the government believes, is that I should be dead or I should have all my stuff stolen, in which case we're going to have big problems. And then when I'm as an Australian looking over there, I'm like, well, these people have my values and they're getting victimized. And like you said, I think you said it in an article, or was it you who mentioned that this is the blueprint. This is the template for Australia, and this is what worries me as well, because they're doing that to them over there, and then you see like all this hate speech crap in England, where British citizens are getting abused by their government for the views that they're having, and I see this as like, it's not a big step to see this happening in Australia. Thankfully, Australia has become more Americanized than maybe Britishized, over the last sort of few decades, which is a good thing. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, I sort of bought into the propaganda of, we don't want to be Americanized, but I think that's actually a really good thing that we have been. It's actually saved us from a lot of, it's actually saved us from maybe potentially letting a lot more dangerous individuals into the country. I mean, immigration is another topic that we need to talk about, but I think we're also quite isolated over here, so we're a little bit insulated from the problems. But because we're developed and because we have the internet and because our speech is still relatively free, we can still see what's going on. And most of the people I speak to, like when you talk to them about these issues, most of the people either don't know what's happening in South Africa, and when you're talking about free speech and all that kind of thing, most people, other than with notable exceptions, strongly believe in freedom of speech and that people don't have a right to be free from offence.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think we've got to this point in our conversations a few times now, where you come down on the side of values, and I come down on the side of, well, values and culture are an expression of race and are deeply connected to it. What's great is that like where the common ground is that we really have to be fighting for the South Africans with just tooth and nail, just getting the word out, getting people to know what's going on there and why it's important, and why they need to make a fuss about it now. So should we talk about God, or are there some shenanigans going on in the chat?
Well, there's no one's really had any questions lately. I've just been responding. I responded via typing because no one really had any questions for us. But look, let's see, we've been going for quite a while. If you want to sort of spend the last 10 minutes on talking about God and all that kind of thing, ask away, mate. I'll answer any question that you've got.
Yeah, I just found it really telling.
Sorry, I'll just stop you there.
Yeah, you got something?
That G Slim has just mentioned that it's sort of already come here with Aboriginal activists. So, Gary, yes, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. They are sort of like, burn it to the ground with Australia and all that kind of thing. I hope they start saying things at Anzac Day so that they get absolutely pilloried, because that'll still happen. Because Anzac Day is sacred. That's a big thing about that Australia have. We have the Anzacs. You don't touch the Anzacs. And that's the thing. It's like, I mean, look, you're not going to get criminalized for it. So you still have your freedom of speech, but you respect these people who died for us. But anyway, it is coming to Australia through these Aboriginal Marxists. Thankfully, I think they are a very, very small but very, very loud minority at this stage, and most people think they're just flogs. I mean, they got their big protests and all that kind of thing, but most people want to keep Australia Day as it is, and I can't see that changing, especially now that people are speaking about their tactics. Anyway, so hopefully that answered your. Well, it wasn't really a question. I was just responding to a statement. Which was definitely something worth responding to. But do you want to ask a question about God or whatever it is?
Well, yeah, okay. The question that fascinates me at the moment is Jordan Peterson a Christian?
Yep. Yeah.
I find it really interesting because he hasn't gone out there and said, look, I've accepted Jesus into my heart as my Lord and Savior or anything like that. He hasn't gone out and explicitly stated, I believe that Jesus died on the cross and rose again 3 days later, and he died to cleanse the sins of the world. But in his talk, he basically outlined a case for like some key Christian concepts. He outlined a case for the existence of the supernatural, or what he was referring to as the infinite. He was outlining a case for what belief is and the importance of and like suffering, and he was talking about, like, he was defining hate and he was defining love, and the idea that, like, with suffering, like, he was alluding to Dante's Inferno, where you go through hell to reach some higher plane, to reach heaven and all that sort of stuff. depending on people's definition of Christianity, like he's definitely a Christian, or he's just like a kind of Jungian philosopher who connects it to Christianity. Do you have any strong views on that? Like, because you've been going to church and everything.
Yeah, it's such a deep topic. We should probably maybe give it. We should start doing more live streams, or at least for an FAQ or something like that, to actually discuss this more in depth, because it is such a deep topic, and I mean it is getting a bit late, and we've been going for quite a while. So I'll answer this as quickly as I can. In terms of Jordan Peterson, I mean, I've been going to church, yeah, and I mean I would label myself a Christian in that I'm not fundamentalist in any way. Like, I've spoken with some fundamentalist Christians, and they say things that I'm like, geez, that's a little bit out there.
You say geez?
Geez. I say geez. I do actually say geez. I know that's a bit weird. But yeah, so I'm a Christian in the sense that, like, because what Jordan Peterson in a lot of his other material sort of stipulates is that religion is a guide on how to live your life. It's not meant to be a God. It's not meant to be, this is how the universe is. And the Bible is like, the Bible stories are descriptions of how people, the Bible is a description of how people describing the human condition. And he sort of breaks it down as an English expert would break down Shakespeare, which I think is great. Like the way he brings it down, like the way he talks about, the Bible, like the story of Genesis is actually the story of how humans came into being, if you look at it from a certain point of view, if you look at it in the right way. And the Bible, they're really talking about how, the spoken word and the spoken truth is so important in the Bible. And like, Jesus says, I am the truth. And I had this fundamentalist Christians telling me, like, no, but Jesus is the truth. And I'm like, yeah, but what does that even mean? And he's like, oh, it's in the scriptures. And I'm like, that doesn't help me. And I tried to explain to him that it wasn't a satisfying answer to me, but he was a really nice guy. So if he does end up watching this, I hope, because I told him about the channel and he was a really nice guy. I really enjoyed talking to him, but at the same time, a few of the things he said I didn't quite resonate with. In that, he sort of just said, oh, it's all in the scriptures, it's all written down. It's like, okay, it's all written down, but what does it actually all mean fundamentally? And what Jordan Peterson is really good at doing is talking about what the stories of the Bible really mean, what they're really, really trying to say. And he does that really well. It will take a while to sort of go into him, but ultimately it's what he advocates, tell the truth all the time, do what, find meaning in life. And yeah, life is suffering. And because life is suffering, you've got to find a way to make that better. And then, there is, in terms of like the infinite and spirituality and all that kind of thing, I want to make a video about what I actually think the universe is. It's pure speculation based on a few scientific facts and a couple of assumptions. And I'd love to make a video about it eventually. I'm kind of scared to make it though, because I don't know how well it would go down. And my idea is sort of what I think the truth is meshes with science and with religions like Christianity and Buddhism and all these kind of things in a lot of ways. So yes, I consider myself a Christian because I think, as the same way that Jordan Peterson thinks, in that Christianity of all the major religions is the most right. Yep. In that Christianity, like what Jesus taught was that individual, like salvation is through the individual. Salvation is through telling the truth and finding meaning. And that's what he's talking about when, look at me and I am God and God is me and all that kind of thing. And that the God is the truth and I am the truth. And it's all about what is the truth and finding out the truth and living the truth and telling the truth. And, basically, and a lot of what Jesus, there's another thing where that, Jesus came in to sort of say that, well, the state isn't the answer, the individual is the answer. And that's the whole point. And this is why, saying, has he accepted Jesus into his heart? I don't know if I could ever do that. And I don't know if I could ever say, well, I've accepted Jesus into my heart and in the sense that, in the way card-carrying Christians do. but I can do it in the sense that what the New Testament teaches in terms of how to live your life and the example that Jesus sets. I mean, it's a really good example, isn't it? And ultimately, like with the crucifixion, the story of that is that the way to live your life is to always be telling the truth, find meaning, always tell the truth. And when outside forces are coming and trying to force you to back down and force you to step down and force you to renounce your beliefs and renounce what you're saying, the answer is never ever to back down. It's always, like I think it was Adam Pickett says, always never apologize and always double down. And this is the answer: never back down. And the example of Jesus is that he didn't back down. The Roman state, he didn't back down. It wasn't the Romans; it was actually the Jewish temples who were also part of the state as well. They crucified him, and he knew that he was going to get crucified, and he knew that if he didn't basically denounce his belief, that he was going to get crucified, and he chose to go through that pain in order to set an example of this is how you live your life. This is what you do. This is how you find meaning, and this is how you get close to God or the Father or existence and all that kind of thing. So yeah, so to answer your question, I think Jordan Peterson is a Christian, but I also think he isn't a Christian. Like, I know I would say the same about myself. Like, I think I am a Christian, but I'm also not a Christian. I also believe a lot of the, I think it's too, this is why I say I'm a classically liberal, libertarian, conservative. It's who's also a free thinker. It's like, I say that because I don't want to have a label, I want to go around saying, well, I'm a Christian, and everyone thinks, he's just a Christian. It's like, well, it's a label. Like, yes, I believe that, Jesus had the story of Jesus, and it does offer a lot of value for people. And I think people, if they have no religion, if they were thinking of choosing one, they should probably lean towards Christianity, because have a look at what Christianity has built. So it is most definitely arguable that it is the best religion of all religions in terms of making your life better. So definitely, if you're doing that. But for me, it's like, I've also got to tell the truth, and I've also got to be honest with myself. It's not something that I could, it's so hard to say, it's hard for me to articulate right now in a way that I haven't already said. It's like, yes, I am a Christian, but no, I'm not a Christian at the same time. Like, yes, I'm a Christian, but I think it could be calling myself a Christian is too limiting. And when I make this video, I'll plan to make it maybe in the next few weeks or months or whatever, when I actually get around to do it, and when I really know what I want to do with this video, I'll put out what I actually believe the universe ultimately is, and how that, why I believe what I do, and why I think that a lot of what Christianity says is right. But also a lot of other religions have a few things right as well. And it's like, I don't want to be just saying, I'm a Christian, therefore none of the others are right, because I don't think that's correct at all. I think Christianity is the most right, but I also think others are sort of right. This is why, freedom of speech, you got to find what's best. There's a certain religion I think is completely wrong, but I won't mention which one that is.
We can't.
Voldemort. It's Voldemort.
The religion that shall not be named. Thank you very much, Matthew. That's really interesting. That's really honest as well.
We can do
it's a question that I've been. I think we should. Well, we'll try to get a few people in.
Maybe we should get.
The question that I asked you. Yeah. The question that I asked you is a question that I've asked quite a lot of people since seeing Jordan Peterson. So it's something that can continue to be explored, because you've basically articulated it. It's like, yes, like there's like the way of describing Christianity, but like he's making the case for it without actually explicitly saying it. So it's a very big question, basically. Yeah.
Yes. So really good live stream, mate. It was another really good one. We should. It wouldn't be bad to do an additional live stream on maybe XYZ's channel to explore the Christian question.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to maybe do that later in the week, and then that way we can do the live stream on my channel on Monday, and we just add an extra one on the XYZ's channel to discuss specifically Christianity.
I think it'd be very interesting. Yeah.
I think it would, and especially with getting Hilton in as well, like maybe a time when he is available, because I think he's a card carrying Christian, isn't he? So it would be interesting to get his perspective.
He's a bit of a Bible thumper, yeah.
Bit of a Bible thumper. See, that's the thing. I'm not a Bible thumper. I've never even read the Bible. My knowledge of Christianity is Bible stories. A lot of what Jordan Peterson says, obviously, and the fact that I grew up in My grandfather was a pastor, so I had it like my entire life. Baptist pastor, Christian, Jesus this, Jesus that, Jesus this, and I kind of rejected it when I was younger, but came back to it later on.
I'm taking the piss a little bit. I think David Hilton likes to take the piss out of himself a bit too.
Okay, he does actually, yeah. But anyway, that was a really good live stream. Thanks everyone in chat. It was a really good one today, man. Not that many questions, lots of comments in chat though, which is good. Remember, if you do have any questions about certain issues, you should ask, and we'll try to answer them if we can, provided I actually read it. But again, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back here same time next week. Might talk to you about making it maybe 15 minutes earlier because it's like 11 o'clock now. It's really late and it's a school night. Yeah. And I'm starting a job tomorrow. Probably we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go once they find out I'm a homophobic, racist, bigot, libertarian who doesn't think, who has a whole lot of wrong think and all that kind of nonsense. Obviously, it's not true, but you know what I mean. Leftists.
Yeah. We're all Nazis to them.
We're all Nazis. That's the thing. We're all fascists. If everyone's a fascist, no one's a fascist. Never forget that. And they're the fascists. Guys, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you when I see you. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. And yeah, cheers.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Oh.